The fight between the Trump administration and a D.C. federal judge over Venezuelan gang members heats up. The ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is over as fighting resumes in Gaza. Trump is set to confer with Vladimir Putin as Ukraine faces a serious defeat in Kursk. I'm Tony Kinnett from the Daily Signal's Tony Kinnettcast, syndicated nationally at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. This is the Daily Signal's top news in 10. Chief Judge James Boasberg, an Obama-appointed federal judge in Washington, D.C., tried to freeze the Trump administration's removal of Venezuelan and Mexican gang members to El Salvador prisons over the weekend via a verbal order and a written order that said different things. The Trump administration didn't order flights directly in the air and over international waters to turn around at the judge's request, and the Trump administration used the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to remove the foreign nationals which were considered an active security threat from the country, given that they were members of the Mexican drug cartels, as well as the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua. In a hearing yesterday, Boasberg demanded information on the location and the number of flights removing the gang and cartel members. Trump's Department of Justice responded, no, citing the judge's lack of authority under Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution, as well as significant national security concerns. Boasberg argued that he had authority to freeze and reverse Trump's actions, and that the DOJ couldn't withhold information from him. Attorney General Pam Bondi responded to Boasberg later that afternoon via a written statement, saying the court lacked jurisdiction to interfere with Trump's national security and foreign affairs authority. She also stated that Trump's role as the commander-in-chief was, quote, not subject to judicial review or intervention, end quote. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller argued with CNN's Casey Hunt over the legalities and the constitutionality of the situation.
So you called the judge's order just earlier today, quote, patently unlawful, end quote, and said that it was an assault on democracy itself. Does that mean that the administration is ignoring this order, and might you ignore future court orders that meet the criteria you laid out?
The President of the United States and his administration reserve all rights under the Constitution to conduct national security operations in defense of the United States. The Alien Enemies Act, which was passed into law by the founding generation of this country, men like John Adams, was written explicitly to give the President the authority to repel an alien invasion of the United States. That is not something that a district court judge has any authority whatsoever to interfere with, to enjoin, to restrict, or to restrain any way. You can read the law yourself. There's not one clause in that law that makes it subject to judicial review, let alone district court review.
So, Stephen, when you say that this person has no authority at all, this is how our system works. It starts with these judges and then continues up. At what point does it become, in your view, legal for the justice system to be looking at this and making a judgment? And I fail to see how there's any other way but to start with where we're starting here before you get to eventually the Supreme Court.
Well, so first of all, there's a term in law, justiciable. This is not justiciable. In other words, this is not subject to judicial remedy. When the President is exercising his Article 2 powers to defend the country against an invasion or to repel a foreign terrorist that is unlawfully in the country, he's exercising his core Article 2 powers as commander-in-chief.
Is Venezuela invading the U.S.?
This is a very important point. This is a Title 50 authority. It's a commander-in-chief authority. So just to ask you a simple question, you talk about how the system works. Does a district court judge have the right to direct or enjoin troop movements overseas? Yes or no?
Well, Stephen, my question, if you could answer my question first,
in other words,
is Venezuela invading our country in a way that would apply this way?
So I'll answer yours and you'll answer mine. Under the terms of the statute, Tren de Aragua is an alien enemy force that has come here as detailed at length in the proclamation at the direction of the Venezuelan government. The statute says that a president has the ability to repel an invasion or predatory incursion that is directed by a foreign
state or a
government.
government.
Speaking of media and legalities, Border Czar Tom Homan responded to a sentiment currently common on the political left about why the President of the United States would enforce a law from 1798 by referencing a set of laws 9 years younger.
You say to those who claim you're using a 200-year-old law to circumvent due process?
An old law? Not as old as the Constitution. We still pay attention to that, don't we?
But some would say this is...
President Trump also answered questions about his use of the Alien Enemies Act to remove certain gang members from the country on Air Force One yesterday.
Criticism that the Alien Enemies Act has only been invoked 3 other times. They were all during times of war. Do you feel that you're using it appropriately right now?
Well, this is a time of war because Biden allowed millions of people, many of them criminals, many of them at the highest level. They emptied jails out. Other nations emptied their jails into the United States. That's an invasion. And these are criminals, many, many criminals, murderers, drug dealers at the highest level, drug lords, people from mental institutions. That's an invasion. They invaded our country. So this isn't, in that sense, this is war.
A very dramatic night in the Middle East as Israel and Hamas have resumed fighting in Gaza. We do not have all of the information yet before us. There's a lot of rumors swirling around, so we're going to try to provide as many details as we can to you, make sure that we cite what is and isn't confirmed, and then hopefully provide a little bit more context and something a little less speculative later on the Tony Kinnett cast today. Last night, the Prime Minister's office in Israel stated that the ceasefire was officially over. There have been rumors that Israeli intelligence discovered Hamas plotting another major October 7th style attack. That is, as of yet, unconfirmed. According to the Associated Press, there are reported strikes in Gaza, in Syria, and in Lebanon. Of note, Lebanon did send troops to its southern border over the last couple of days after a Hezbollah explosive attack. It's unconfirmed whether this was a rocket, a grenade, or some other explosive device killed Lebanese troops in the area. Here's where things get a little bit tricky. Reuters is currently reporting that there is ballistic missile movement at Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps bases in Iran, and there were different reports from Yemen that several senior IRGC members were eliminated in U.S. attacks on Houthi targets over the weekend. Again, that isn't confirmed yet, but Reuters is currently reporting that there has been significant movement in Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps bases inside of Iran. Another unconfirmed rumor citing Saudi media claiming that the United States has sunk the Iranian intelligence ship Zagros, which was supposed to be a key boat in its signal intelligence fleet. It's not clear whether this boat was sunk by the United States or if this particular ship is even in operation whatsoever. We haven't been able to find anything about the direct claim that this ship has sunk or that it was the United States that did so. And so we can only really give this the credibility of a rumor at this point. Assuming that the situation in the Middle East doesn't change things too drastically, President Donald Trump is set to confer later today with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss a potential ceasefire and terms surrounding it between Russia and Ukraine. The situation is a little more difficult as Russia has advanced on its Kursk region, which Ukraine had made significant gains into, and feasibly would have then traded some of that land back for the Donbass and Crimea regions which Russia currently occupies. Trump has stated that, quote, many elements of a final agreement between the United States and Russia have been agreed to, but much remains. Our White House correspondent Elizabeth Mitchell was able to ask a question to the press secretary Carolyn Leavitt yesterday regarding possible actions considered by the Trump administration if the talks don't go as planned.
Will President Trump put sanctions on Russia if the talks on Tuesday don't go as hoped? And secondly, have any illegal immigrants self-deported through CBP home yet?
To your first question, it's something the president has floated, and certainly he's willing to do if necessary. I don't have anything to read out, and I would never get ahead of the president on such a serious decision. To your second question about the CBP Home app, I would have to check in with the Department of Homeland Security, but it's a great question, and we're very proud to repurpose this app, which the Biden administration abused to facilitate the mass illegal entry of illegal immigrants into our country. It was like a fast pass at Disneyland. That's not happening under this administration. administration, we are encouraging illegal immigrants to actively self-deport to maybe save themselves from being in one of these fun videos.
There's a lot more to discuss, from the swatting and attempted murder of conservative influencers and show hosts to energy prices beginning a steep descent. So before you go, check the description below to make sure you're subscribed to the Tony Kinnett Cast, and join us tonight at 7 p.m. for these stories and updates on Russia, Ukraine, and the Middle East. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Daily Signal's Top News in 10. Take care.